That BIOS from my website, and I don't know how to update it. Honestly, I think I have access to it anymore. So
Oh, shoot.
we're gonna work on that.
So picture this. It was the end of my fall semester in sophomore year, and I gotta start thinking about internships for after my junior year. And in software engineering, you usually need a few projects on your resume in order to help you stand out. And I don't have many. So over winter break, I quickly taught myself a few new skills, one of them being web development. One of the projects I made with a fellow classmate was a simple weather app. All it does is grab your location, or you can enter in your city and state yourself, and it will give you weather based on a API that we found online. Keep in mind, this was my first ever web development project. And can you guess what the next one was?
Put your hands up, this is your last chance. So boy, prepare to die. Get ready to meet your maker. Before I put one right between.
I know what you're thinking. He is the least qualified person in the world to lead us. And you are right.
Yeah, I got a bit in over my head. So how did this all start? Well, as you saw at the beginning, in an interview back in 2022, he had mentioned that his website, which was actually still the current website when I started working on the new one, was very outdated and he couldn't even edit it. And he's one of my favorite artists of all time. If you haven't already, please go check him out. He will be linked all over in the description. And it's kind of just the perfect conditions where he has a website that hasn't been worked on in years. It's just a single page. It has all the information on it needs, but it could use a bit of a makeover. So all I did was I took the old website and I took everything from it and I kind of put it into sections with different pages and made it look a little bit nicer. And okay, how was I even allowed to do this? This guy has almost 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify and over 100,000 followers on TikTok alone. You can call me someone of a ground floor. Yeah, I started listening to this guy before he was cool. So back in summer of 2022, which funnily enough was when I had my first ever Godot internship at Blank Boy Games, it was remote, so I was definitely doing my job, and I was not scrolling TikTok and randomly found this guy named Gander performing the song that I just played at the beginning there. Now, that wasn't the first I had heard about him. I had heard one of his songs about a year ago called Breathe, which I thought was okay, but I kind of just wrote off. But this new song went hard. So I went over to his Spotify, listened to all of his music on repeat whilst working, and a little later on, I looked him up and I found his email address. And at the time, he only had like 1K monthly listeners on Spotify, so I shot him an email, and funnily enough, he emailed back. And so for the next about year or so, we occasionally emailed back and forth, kind of just talking about his music or just music in general. And in late December of last year, I asked if I could redo his website. But what I did not mention though was this was my first website that I have ever made. And I don't even know if he'll know that until he watches this video. So sure, I did disclose I was a student, but for the next 6 months, I basically had to act like I was an expert on web development, even though I hadn't even learned React yet. Also, which we'll get into later on, I didn't even know how to run the website on a web hosting service. So the main pages were the homepage, about page, links, merch, and contact. So for the homepage, I went ahead and took his YouTube banner and I just slapped it into a navigation bar. He also had this cool iframe in his original website, which I just kind of copied over. And I also made cool little bubble animations for each of the song covers and the iframe as well. And all these are just simple hrefs. So are these as well. If you click on one, it will take you to the next page, which this is just a simple about page, which has his main picture and also a quick description, which finally has the updated age in it, I believe. Next is the merch page, which is just a bunch of images with links that will take you to the actual merch page on Spotify. Now, I did want to make it so that way you could just buy merch from the actual website, but that required a paid subscription to Shopify's API. And finally, just a simple contact page, which was ripped directly from his old website. But here's the part of the website that I am by far most proud of. If you close in the window, you'll see it is fully mobile supported, even with a slide out burger menu. This mobile version took me almost a month alone. And all things considered, this is a pretty simple website, which I did know, and I had most of it planned out before I even reached out to him about it. So I did have some confidence going in, but there were a few things I still didn't know how to do. One of the main ones being, I didn't even know how to host the website. And this was by far the hardest thing to get down. Because me, the expert, had to instruct Ethan and his manager, the people with the money, where to put it to get the servers up. The obvious choice was GoDaddy because that's what they were using for their domain, but that was even still hard to know which plan to pick because GoDaddy doesn't make it beginner friendly at all. But I was able to do enough research where we were able to pick the right plan first try. But then came to putting the files on it and making them run. One of the main issues was I couldn't get the domain to return anything. I had just tried a text file and I couldn't get it to run that. The solution that took me 2 days to figure out was simply to just make sure that I had the right domain enabled on the hosting. And after that, putting the files on it were not straightforward, but I was able to find a helpful LinkedIn article of all things that went over how to upload the files to cPanel, take out the necessary files to run it, and write what's called a .htaccess file that allows you to go to the multiple pages that are within the website. And after like a week of all of this combined, the website was up and we were done, and celebration, confetti. But then something happened about a week ago. For some reason, the website went from looking like this to this, with no actual change to the files on the server that were there since the site went live. And I was panicking. I already put this on my resume. I had built all this trust with Ethan and his manager and a couple of his friends, and I was freaking out. And I texted him assuring I would figure it out as soon as possible, even though I did not know if I was going to be able to, because again, I hadn't touched these files in over a month. It was there and it was just sitting. And it just randomly did this. But luckily, I just conversed with some of my classmates and we found the issue was the font file was not being accepted for some reason. And the solution was just to use a link from Google Fonts, which very luckily had the exact same font I was already using. And after explaining this whole story on camera, I am just now realizing just how lucky everything was and just how perfectly things lined up to allow this website to be made. And obviously the thumbnail is just for clicks. Ethan and his manager were amazing people to work with. I mean, maybe they were more easygoing because I had offered to do the website for free. Yes, I don't know if I mentioned before, but I did this entire website for free on my own volition. Don't come after them. It was my idea. I just thought it would be really cool to have done his website because I was just such a fan of his music and I also needed something on my portfolio. So it just kind of, again, lined up. And for fans of GWiz, which I assume you are if you're watching this video, I hid a secret text file just called gwiz.txt. So if you do /gwiz.txt, you'll get a funny little Easter egg. Once again, huge shout out to Ethan Gander. This was a really fun experience and I still have absolutely no idea why he allowed me to do this. All of his stuff will be linked in the description down below along with his new website. Keep GWizzing.
It was all an illusion, and everything fades, so you can't hate the game, hate the players who played you, they led you astray. Every word I sow, so the blade pierces through me. The credits start to roll, like the end of a movie.